In the previous lecture, we have expressed the kinetic energy as a function of the generalized coordinates and generalized velocities. Particularly, we wrote the kinetic energy as a homogeneous function of generalized velocities of zeroth order, first order and second order. Now, we also mentioned for scleronomic system where the coordinates are not explicit function of time, because for scleronomic system we do not have constraints which are explicit function of time. For such systems, naturally the T0 and T1 they vanish simply because that the expressions of T0 and T1 contain del Ri del T. I mean, the explicit appearance of time in the generalized coordinates are a necessity for T0 and T1 to be non-zero. So, in all such cases, I mean for scleronomic systems, then the kinetic energy is homogeneous and quadratic in generalized velocities. What we are interested in is at this time is the total rate of change of the kinetic energy. So, we are interested in something like rate of change of T. For that, we would like to begin from Lagrange's equation of the second kind, where we already have an expression of this form, that the total rate of change with respect to time of the partial derivative of the kinetic energy with respect to generalized velocity. From that quantity, if we subtract del T del Qj, then what we obtain is the generalized force. The generalized force can also be decomposed in terms of potential forces. That means a part of the force which we can derive as the negative gradient of the negative gradient of the potential, and the other part is non-potential force, the Qj prime here. So, one can relate the various partial derivatives of the kinetic energy to the potential and the non-potential forces. Now, the total derivative of kinetic energy can also be written as del T of the kinetic energy, and then a partial derivative with respect to Qj's and with Qj dot, and partial derivative with respect to Qj dot and the Qj double dot. So, these are like generalized accelerations, and for both these expressions, both the terms, this one and this one, we assume the Einstein summation convention. So, that means if you see, I mean roughly, without bothering much about covariant and contravariant part, let us suppose we use this summation convention in this form, that the repeated index means there exists a summation. So, there is a sum over j. Unless we explicitly mention, we will always assume that repeated index means there is a sum. So, this expression again can be simplified a bit. We leave the second term as it is, first term as it is, and the third term we write it as the total derivative of this partial derivative with respect to generalized velocity times the generalized velocity, and from there we subtract the ddt of del del Qj dot of T and then Qj dot. So, and then the second and the fourth term could be combined. If you look at the Lagrange's equation of the second kind, then what we see is the right hand side is nothing but the negative of the sum of first and fourth term. So, as such, we write the total rate of change of kinetic energy to be the partial derivative with respect to time, and then this third term of this previous line, the total derivative of the partial derivative with respect to velocity of the kinetic energy at times the generalized velocity, and some terms involving the potential and non-potential forces. We can still simplify the expression a bit particularly you need to look at the del T del Qj dot Qj dot. Remember, there is a sum. So, what is this quantity? If you remember, it appears in the slide at the end. So, I mean, you see the second term appearing in the total rate of change of kinetic energy has this quantity. This we try to evaluate it using Euler's theorem on homogeneous functions. And what is that theorem? Essentially, it says, let us suppose that just a simple function of two variable x and y. Suppose it is a homogeneous function of order n. So, which means like f of alpha x, if you replace x by alpha x and y by alpha y, you get alpha to the power n and times f of x y. Just a simple example like f of x y, let us say it is a x square plus b y square. And then when we replace x by alpha and y by x by alpha x and y by alpha y, a simple substitution, simple algebra, that gives you alpha square times f of x and y. So, if you take partial derivative of such a function with respect to alpha, after you substituted this particular x by alpha x and y by alpha y, the partial derivative gives you n times alpha to the power n minus 1 and it returns the function. Now, you can do a little bit of variable substitution, that x prime is equal to alpha x and y prime as alpha y. Then essentially this del alpha of f can be written as del f del x prime times del x prime del alpha plus del f del y prime del alpha. This is essentially the chain rule. And of course, the way we defined x prime and y prime, it gives us del f del alpha x times x plus del f del alpha y times y. And in this expression, if we set alpha to be 1, then we obtain del f del x times x plus del f del y times y is equal to n times the original function. Now, this can easily be generalized for not just two variable, for any n variable systems. So, if you have this sum del f del x I times x I, you get n times the function. It is particularly useful when we have terms like del t del q j dot times q j dot. Now, you remember the kinetic energy T, we wrote it as T0 plus T1 plus T2. So, we break it apart like del T0 del Qj dot and then del T1 del Qj dot and similar term for T2. And here the first term is not, T0 is not a function of generalized velocity. So, it gives us 0. The second one, by definition of Euler's, I mean by using Euler's theorem on homogeneous function, it should be just T1, 1 times T1, because this is T1 is a homogeneous function of generalized velocity of order 1. There is only one appearance, I mean power 1. T2 is of order 2. So, we will have twice T2 from the above sum. Now, this result we can use it in our expression of total rate of change of kinetic energy. So, when we substitute that, what we get is a partial derivative with respect to time, then total derivative of T1 and twice T2, and we also have del V del Qj dot minus Qj prime and Qj dot. Now, you see this sum, this del V del Qj times Qj dot, it is nothing but the difference between the total time derivative of potential and the partial derivative with respect to time of the potential. It follows from the chain rule. So, we substitute that in this expression, and also instead of writing T1 and T2, we just do a little bit of algebra. We include the total kinetic energy T, so that T1 plus T2 is written more like twice T minus T1 minus T0 minus 2T0. It's just algebra. I mean, there is no physical aspect that why we substitute it this way. Once the substitution's done, and if you do a little bit of further rearrangement of terms, say for example, take the left hand side, the ddt of the kinetic energy, to the right hand side, and add it to the total time derivative of the potential, then you obtain the total time derivative of the kinetic plus potential energy, which is our total energy, is equal to the following expression. Okay. So, we have something like 2T0 plus T1, its total time derivative. We also have partial derivative with respect to time of the kinetic energy, and partial derivative with respect to time of the potential energy and non-potential forces. Now, this expression is pretty general. You remember that Lagrange's equation of the second kind, from where we started, it holds true for rheonomic systems with non-potential forces. So, I mean, this is the most general expression we could arrive at. Now, look at this expression again. For scleronomic system where Ri's are not explicit function of time, so that means when you do a point transformation, the point transformation does not involve explicit appearance of time in the coordinates, I mean in the transformation expression, then del Ri del T is 0. Now, I mean, why we are involving del Ri del T? If you go back a bit, then you remember in the expression of T1 and T0, the del Ri del T, the partial derivative of the coordinate, our old coordinate, not the generalized coordinate, with respect to time, that appears. So, I mean, we take the partial if this partial derivative vanishes, then T1 and T2, T0, they are 0, and this is true for scleronomic system. Also, that means total time derivative of the energy, total energy T plus V, is equal to now partial derivative with respect to, I mean, with respect to time of the potential energy and non-potential forces. If the potential energy is not a function of time, and then the rate of change of energy is simply proportional to the power dissipated by the non-potential forces. So, force times corresponding velocity gives you the power, and sum over all such power gives you total power. So, this is the dissipated power and this is the total rate of change of energy. This is intuitively quite clear as it should be. I mean, now, what are the conservative systems? Conservative systems, typically we say that both the terms should vanish. So, that means the potential should be a not explicit function of time, plus the non-potential functions should not be there. Okay, I mean, this can be extended, the definition can be extended this way, that this sum, if it vanishes, then too it is conservative, because after all the rate of change of total energy is 0. So, systems where the Qj prime and Qj dot, so that means the non-potential force times its corresponding velocity, and their sum vanishes, we often call them gyroscopic forces. So, sum is there, we must remember that. For such cases also dE dt is 0 if the potential is not time dependent. So, these are also in a way conservative system, although we have to be a bit careful about conservative, the word, because for such systems it may happen, although the total energy is not changing, but we might have a little difficulty about the conservation of momentum. We will discuss that after we introduce the generalized momentum. In any case, this expression that we are looking at, it may happen that this non-potential forces are linear in velocity. And particular case we studied before, where we introduced the Rayleigh dissipation function or dissipation functions in general, and we saw the non-potential force could be written as the negative of derivative with respect to generalized velocity of the non-potential force. And for all such cases, if you multiply Qj prime with Qj dot, so this is again power dissipated. This is by definition it will be del f del Qj dot, there is a sum over j. So, that is according to chain rule, because the f is not a function of time or anything else. So, you have minus twice del f. I mean, this is also follows, this follows actually from the previous definition, meaning the Euler's theorem on homogeneous function. So, if we substitute that, what we get for systems where the potential is not an explicit function of time, but there are non-potential forces which are linear in velocity and can be calculated using dissipation function. We have the rate of change of energy is equal to negative of 2 times dissipation function. This is not surprising, the factor 2. The dissipation function, if you remember, it is proportional to the quadratic the square of the velocity, and there was a half factor. So, it is like for a simple 1D case, it was half gamma x dot square, where x dot gives you the velocity along x direction. So, if you take the derivative with respect to velocity, the 2 factor cancels, and what you have essentially is the generalized force. So, what you expect for such 1D problem, that what should be the power dissipated? The power dissipated should be just the work done by the non-potential force, which is minus gamma x dot times x dot, that gives you the power. So, it is minus gamma x dot square, which by definition again that would be 2 times the negative of f. So, that is basically the origin, I mean that is why the 2 factor is there. It is basically the force has a factor of 2. So, this is where we are getting this 2 factor from. But in any case, intuitively it is quite clear that if you have a dissipation function, then you expect that total energy should not be constant and it should decrease over time. And this is perfectly clear from this expression, that in this case the energy will decrease with time and it would be directly. We have been going through various mathematical tricks, for example, writing down the kinetic energy as a function of the generalized velocity of various orders. Then we just looked at how the total energy changes for various types of system like rheonomic and then scleronomic, and with the potential of various types. So, at this stage we just give a brief pause and try to look at what we are trying to do, I mean what we have accomplished so far. First of all, what we did is we arrived at Lagrange's equation of motion of different type. I mean, in the sense, since we introduced the generalized coordinate, we got the Lagrange's equations of the second kind, and then we got Lagrange's equation. The most general form. The next step is to understand various aspects of the physical system, in the sense that given a Lagrangian, if you can construct it, we have seen plenty of example, you can solve the systems, I mean solve the equation of motion, and then you know all about the system. But then there are tricks in classical mechanics, or there are properties of systems which we don't need the equation of motion to be solved. We can get them from simple principle, such as various types of conservations, for example, the energy or the momentum. Such conservations are useful. Often we don't need to solve the equation of motion, and it gives us certain physical insights that what to do with such systems if we have certain quantity conserved. So, this is one of the main motivation why we are looking at the kinetic energy in a particular form, why we checked that how Lagrangian remains invariant if you add the total time derivative of a function of certain kind. The major motivation is to look at essentially the conservations of energy, momentum and other quantities. Now, by other quantity, I mean a more general statement would be, should be rather, for a given physical system, we have various constants of motion and integrals of motion. I mean, like probably you know, I mean, the definitions are not very strict. Constants of motions are like quantities which remain constant during the motion. For example, in a conservative system, you do have the energy constant throughout the duration of the motion. So, it is a constant of motion. What about integrals of motion? Integrals of motions are also a constant of motion in the sense that they also do not change over time. The only difference is integrals of motion should not be explicit function of time, whereas constant of motion does not have any such restriction. So, all integrals of motions are constants of motion, but the opposite is not true. All constants of motion are not integrals of motion. The only thing which distinguishes the two is integrals of motion must not have explicit appearance of time in its expression. So, we will try to look at various integrals of motion and how to derive them, and also later we will see that certain conservation like energy, momentum, they also follow from some symmetry arguments. And finally, the above, like the symmetry to conservation, also has something to do with the transformation and invariance. So, we transform the Hamiltonian a bit and we demand that it should remain invariant. There is a certain kind of symmetry, of course, and then that again leads to conservation. So, we would like to do all that, and finally, usually in the books, for example, Goldstein's books, you will find that variational principle is a very useful tool from which the Lagrange equation, or to be more correct, if it is derived from variational principle, we call it Euler-Lagrange equation. So, Euler-Lagrange equation can be derived from variational principle, and in Goldstein, the Lagrange's equation of second kind is also derived from variational principle. But that is not the only way to get these equations. These equations we can get it from D'Alembert principle. So, we will stick with that. We will we'll understand the symmetry, conservation, and finding out constants of motion, etc. Eventually, we will have to go to the variational principle, yes, but we will complete the Lagrangian dynamics as much as possible, and then we will show that variational principle remain an alternative, in the sense that you can use that to finally get the Euler-Lagrange equation. So, our method that we are doing everything, and variational principle we are leaving it only towards the end. I mean, just like the syllabus says, this is not exactly following Goldstein, it is more like probably the Gantmacher's book. But still, the essential concepts are all same. So, it really does not matter that which order you are following, there are no conflicts. I mean, this I wanted to make sure that you have no confusion as to why we are not working with the variational principle and working everything else out. So, we will just complete our discussion on conservation, symmetry, transformation, invariance, etc., and then we will go to variational principle. We have seen in Lagrangian dynamics couple of slides before the total rate of change of energy, where we define energy to be the kinetic energy and potential energy, I mean the traditional definition, that can be expressed using various parts of the the kinetic energy expression. So, for example, T0 or T1. Now, we would like to extend these arguments, I mean the rate of change of energy, or if we can define some function which does not change with time, just like in conservative system the energy does not change with time although the system evolves. So, can we define other quantities? To do that, I mean we need to introduce certain definition. For example, the generalized momenta. In Newtonian mechanics, we have momentum. We can define momentum. I mean simply mass times velocity at a particular time. That can also be written as a partial derivative of the kinetic energy with respect to the velocity. Now, I mean we are of course assuming that there is no velocity dependent potential, but suppose that we include that, then of course this definition is going to change. But for the time being, let us have the simple definition that our potentials are not function of velocity. In that case, we define the potential to be simply a partial derivative of the kinetic energy with respect to velocity of the kinetic energy. The Lagrangian equivalent is simply the jth generalized momentum. I mean we call it generalized momentum now because we are using generalized coordinates. So, essentially partial derivative of the Lagrangian with jth generalized coordinate gives us jth generalized momentum. So, we write P j is equal to del L del Q j. Now, we would like to establish certain theorems, or like we mentioned, we would like to calculate certain quantities which does not easily change with time, constants of motion or integral of motion, using the generalized momentum. So, we go to the next step in this way, that you remember we found earlier that del T del Q j dot times Q j dot, and there is a sum over j that gives us del Q j dot T1 plus T2 and Q j dot. You see T0 is not here simply because T0 is not a function of generalized velocity. Now, this expression using Euler's theorem on a homogeneous function can be simply written down as T1 plus twice T2, and that means we can write Pj times Qj dot is equal to T1 plus 2 T2. It is a simple result. Particularly for scleronomic system, we have T1 equal to 0. So, this sum is equal to 2 times kinetic energy. Okay. Now, if we have a system which has a velocity dependent potential, we have been avoiding it so far. So, let us include that. Suppose U is our total potential. It has a velocity dependent part here, and it has a regular potential which is not a function of velocity. And this part of the potential, it gives us generalized force Qj to be equal to minus del V del Qj. And this part of the potential, which is a function of velocity, we demand this to be a homogeneous function of the velocity. For simplicity, we have just taken one power out, the remaining parts are all included in Vi, and that is perfectly fine. We can write it this way. Particularly, this linear form where we have this potential linearly dependent on the generalized velocity. It frequently appears in electricity and magnetism. We have seen this example earlier when we introduced a general potential in using vector potential and scalar potential for a charge experiencing Lorentz force. I did not discuss that further because officially the vector potential will be introduced, I guess, in the next semester. So, this is why I was avoiding that, but you might have heard this term, the vector potential, and you know the potential can depend on generalized velocity like we discussed before. So, we go ahead with assuming that U has this form. Now, Pi, the ith generalized momentum, is del L del Q I dot by definition, and this is equal to del T del Q I dot minus V I, assuming the previous definition, this one. So, if we multiply this by Q I dot and take a sum, I mean our summation convention indicates that there is a sum here. So, Pi Q I dot sum over I is simply del T del Q I dot minus V I Q I dot, and that is equal to, you see the first term is already we got earlier to be T1 plus 2 T2. So, that part is here, we include that. After all, this is only the kinetic energy term, so that part is fine. And now V I Q I dot, by definition it should be U minus V, and there is a negative sign here. So, we have minus U plus V, and so we make another substitution. Instead of T1 plus twice T2, we write everything using total kinetic energy T. So, instead of T1 plus T2, it becomes 2 T2, it becomes 2 times kinetic energy minus T1 minus twice T0. So, for scleromorphic system, having gyroscopic force and ordinary potential force, that means U, our final expression gives us that Q I dot P I sum over I is 2 T minus U plus V. We remember this expression, we need to use it again and again, and now we formally start looking at something called Jacobi integral. Jacobi integral is basically, it follows from an important theorem on total energy. So, we start with total rate of change of the Lagrangian. ddt of L, using chain rule, we write it down as partial derivative with respect to time, with respect to generalized coordinate, and with respect to generalized velocity. Then we use our trick. This is the Qj double dot is ddt of Qj dot. So, this combined term we write it as ddt of del L del Qj dot, there should be a dot here, typo, del L del Qj dot minus ddt of del L del Qj dot times Qj dot. Now, you can see, I mean this trick we have used before. These two terms, the second and fourth, their difference essentially gives us the generalized force term, particularly if we have a non-potential term, right. So, we take the first term and then we take the total derivative, the third term, and this subtraction we write it as the generalized force. Now, you see a particularly interesting result, I mean we obtain if del L del T is 0 and Qj prime is 0, which means there is no non-potential force, and also the Lagrangian is not an explicit function of time. So, I mean this is, and the result of this two condition is, going back to the earlier expression, you see del L del T, this term vanishes and also the third term vanishes, qj prime is 0. Now, this total time derivative L, and here what we have is nothing but Pj Qj dot, because del L del Qj dot is by definition it is Pj. If we combine this, what we obtain is the total time derivative of Pj Qj dot minus L is 0. Now, this sum over j Pj Qj dot minus L, this and subtracted L, we call it Jacobi integral, okay, and this is independent of time, particularly if there is no non-potential force and the Lagrangian is not an explicit function of time. So, this is an integral of motion, it is not changing with time and it is not an explicit function of time. So, it is our first integral of motion. Now, you would say that we have seen this term, this term, this is Hamiltonian. Yes, this is Hamiltonian, but then we have not introduced Hamiltonian yet. And remember, Hamiltonian formalism is slightly different. Hamiltonian is an explicit function of generalized momentum, generalized momenta and generalized coordinates. But this Jacobi integral is actually a mixture, because we have L, which is a function of Qj, Qj dot, and also we have Pj here. So, it is basically, you can say, I mean, this is a construct that we are getting from generalized coordinates and generalized velocities. We are not officially into generalized moment in the Hamilton's language yet, but we can already see that if we define that function, then it does not change with time. So, this is a precursor of the Hamiltonian formalism. So, even before you go to Hamiltonian formalism, you can begin to see that why defining such a quantity might be useful. I mean, of course, it has better implication, but it is good for us. Now, suppose you are given a problem where you do not have a non-potential force and then the Lagrangian, that means kinetic energy and potential energy, they are not explicit function of time, which is you can say it results from having a constraint which does not depend on time. So, that means you have a scleronomic system. So, if you have a scleronomic system, for that this is an integral of motion, this quantity does not change with time. So, even if you do not get the equation of motion or do not solve the equation of motion, you can straight away declare that this to be an integral of motion. Now, I mean, how do you in general find out such integrals of motion? It is not easy. There are certain cases where we can do this, in other cases we need some special mechanism to find one integral of motion from the others. We will do that, we will do that after some time. The concept of Jacobi integral can be extended for velocity dependent potential as well. Let us say L is t minus u, where we have defined u to be a homogeneous function of generalized velocities plus a regular potential. So, we write we have defined it earlier. Now, the Jacobi integral, how does it look now? J is Pj Qj dot sum over j minus L, and we have seen this Pj Qj dot minus L, this can be written as, I mean, we derived that earlier, that twice t minus t1 minus twice t0 minus u plus p, this comes from Pj Qj dot, and then we subtract L, which is minus t plus u. So, you see the u cancels and the other terms like twice t and minus t, that gives you 1 t. So, we have t plus v and certain other terms. So, Jacobi integral can be generalized to be our traditional energy E minus T1 minus twice T0. So, you see when we say that Hamiltonian is basically the total energy, that is a very tricky statement. It is, but only for scleronomic systems, which of course, I mean, in physics, you go to, you know, the quantum systems, or you deal with the celestial mechanics, which means the planets and stars, then usually you do not have constraints. I mean, the small particle electron, it's moving in space, it experiences only a potential from the, you know, nucleus, but it does not have any constraint like, okay, there is a plane, it cannot penetrate, I mean, it cannot go beyond that. Even if if you have a barrier, you write the barrier as a potential function, not a constraint. So, for atomic physics, we don't have constraints, and then for celestial mechanics like planets, stars, galaxies and whatnot, there too we don't have a constraint that planet must move along a bead, I mean along a hoop, or planet is embedded on a parabola. I mean, those things does not happen, fortunately. So, this is why when they say we have only scleronomic system in such scenario, and that means r, a coordinate of a particle, is not an explicit function of time. So, which means t1 and t0 are 0. In that case, we have J is equal to E, and we can say the Hamiltonian is usually a constant of motion. But this is most correct definition, which is extended to rheonomic systems as well. So, this is our good integral of motion. Another important topic that we should check, we should understand, I mean, at this stage, is what happens when you change the Lagrangian by adding the total time derivative of a function. And we have seen that before. It leaves the equation of motion intact. We mentioned that equation of motion is invariant under such transformation. Okay. Now, suppose we do that, and then what happens to the generalized momentum or the Jacobi integral? The generalized momentum, after adding this function, suppose L goes to L prime, then P j prime would be del L prime del Q j dot. You see that we did not change the Q j's, generalized coordinates are same, only the Lagrangian is different now. So, what we have is del L prime del Q j dot, that gives us del L del Q j plus del Q j dot of dg dt, okay, total time derivative of g. Now, you can do a trick at this stage, that this total time derivative, you expand that using the chain rule. So, that means it becomes d dt of g becomes equal to del t of g plus del g del q j dot, like that. And if you apply this partial derivative del q j dot on that expanded form of g and interchange the order of derivatives, then it is easy to find that it should be del g del q j, as simple as that. Now, if you have that, then essentially your generalized momentums changing after you make a transformation of this kind. So, this is slightly disturbing in the sense that we thought equation of motion is not changing, but then equation of motion is nothing but rate of change of momentum, maybe using the generalized coordinate, but then we can say this is nothing but rate of change of generalized momentum is equal to generalized force. This is your equation of motion. So, if the generalized momentum changes, then what about the generalized force? Interestingly, that changes too. I mean, this is basically, this is coming from, this is a part that used to be in the generalized force before. Now you are adding that with Pj, the generalized force is now different. So you can say that our equation of motion is remaining unchanged simply because now we change the definition of the momentum. Similarly, we have changed the definition of the generalized force. That we are not deriving it here, but it is easy to see. We can do that as part of an exercise maybe, that how equation of motion changes remains unchanged, although the generalized momentum changes. But yeah, it happens. It's basically we are adding equal term or subtracting equal term on the two part of the equation of motion. Now, what about Jacobi integral? Jacobi integral changes similarly. We have, you see, the L prime changes and then we have Pj prime. So, basically I am defining a new Jacobi integral J prime in terms of the primed quantities Pj prime Qj dot minus L prime, and this Pj prime is Pj plus del G del Qj, we have seen that, times Qj dot minus L minus ddt of G. So, take the Pj Qj dot minus L, that gives us the old Jacobi integral, and the remaining terms, you see what we have is del G del Qj Qj dot minus ddt, total time derivative of G. But this is nothing but negative of partial derivative with respect to time of G, so del G del T. So, Jacobi integral, we see that it is changing, yes. If G is an explicit function of time, then it changes. But then if G is an explicit function of time, then Lagrangian becomes an explicit function of time, meaning the new Lagrangian, and if new Lagrangian becomes explicit function of time, then it is not a what you call a conservative system anymore. We have seen that before. So, that way there is no conflict here. The Jacobi integral now includes a part which is coming from G if G is an explicit function of time. If G is not an explicit function of time, our conservative system remains conservative as before, nothing changes. But if it is, then such a transformation will give us a result where the Jacobi integral is not constant of an integral of motion anymore. Finally, we look at the cyclic coordinates, which is an easy concept. We have our Lagrange equation, Lagrange's equation, which is total time derivative of the generalized momentum. Now we know its generalized momentum. Subtracted from that, del L del Qj is equal to 0. Now, what if this quantity is 0, del L del Qj? If it is 0, it only means the Lagrangian is not an explicit function of Qj. If it is not an explicit function of Qj, the implication is the ddt of Pj is 0, or other words Pj is constant. So, it is straightforward result. If Lagrangian is not a function of a particular generalized coordinate, then the corresponding momentum is conserved. So, you see, I mean, this structure of the Lagrangian, that it being not a function of a generalized coordinate, leads to some kind of conservation. If the momentum Pj, jth generalized momentum, if it is constant, if it is not changing with time, then it is a conserved quantity. So, in a given system, we saw that under certain cases, Jacobi integral is an integral of motion. I mean, in the sense that it does not change with time. Not always, at least for scleronomic system we found it. And also, now we find that if we have cyclic coordinates, corresponding momenta are also conserved. So, which is a good thing in the sense that we can already understand that certain integrals of motion can be found out this way from the cyclic coordinates and from Jacobi integral. We do not have to do much, we just have to look at the form of L. Does it have time explicitly appearing anywhere? No. And then Jacobi integral is a constant of motion, an integral of motion. Does it have any cyclic coordinate? Yes. Then corresponding momentum is also a conserved quantity. So, analysis of a dynamical system becomes easier simply because we do not have to do much mathematics. We do not have to explicitly write down the equation of motion. We can simply look at how the Lagrangian is, and from there we try to find out what would be the properties. But there is a bigger implication. If you go back and look at this result gauge transformation, it says the momentum's changing, and like I mentioned before, when the momentum changes, actually we are changing the generalized force also. We are changing the potential part of the, or just like del L del Qj, this del G del Qj also appears on the other side. So, overall equation of motion remains intact. But you can already begin to see it might be possible to make a coordinate transformation such that this new momentum becomes our regular momentum, generalized momentum, and we will make a change in Qj. If we can do that, then perhaps it would be possible to bring the generalized momentum part, generalized force part, to be included into the momentum such that our new Lagrangian becomes cyclic in that coordinate. So, basically we do this gauge transformation. So, that means we add a function. After adding the function, we redefine Qj, and it might be possible to find a function and redefining Qj in a particular way, so that the new momentum, it becomes whatever it becomes. The Lagrangian will not be an explicit function of the new generalized coordinate. So, we are changing the generalized coordinate definition slightly after adding that function. If we can do that, then analysis is simpler, because we will have lot of cyclic coordinates now, because if we change the generalized coordinate through a point transformation to another set of generalized coordinate such that the momentum definition changes, but Lagrangian is no longer a function of coordinates, then we have cyclic coordinate, we have conserved momentum. It is particularly easy for the analysis, but then we are going too far ahead in the sense that we will not do it now, we will do it much later. But because we are looking at gauge transformation and generalized momentum and how they are changing, it is important that we discuss this once. We will discuss it again. Let us look at another important property of a system of particles. We will see that few other conserved quantities follow from a certain restriction on the nature or structure of the Hamiltonian. One important aspect is the homogeneity of the space from which the conservation of total linear momentum follows. Let us suppose we have a system of particles without any external force. Particularly, this description applies to, let us say, we are considering the solar system. We have sun and many planets. They are all experiencing gravitational forces due to each other. But if you look at it from outside the solar system, there are no external forces acting on it, which means we are disregarding for the moment all other galaxy and other celestial structures. It is only couple of particles. Now, such a system, we can describe that using a regular coordinate system x, y, z, and each particle will have a position vector r I, ith particle will have a position vector r I. For such a system, because we do not have any constraint, the regular Cartesian coordinates are good enough to be chosen as the generalized coordinates. Now, what if we change the origin of the axis by a small amount epsilon? So, we are describing this system of particles from some origin, and then we are moving the origin by a small amount epsilon. The point is basically, if we move the origin and try to describe it from a shifted coordinate system, how does the description change? Do we expect it to change or not? Well, first let us look at how does the coordinate vector change. This dotted line, it shows the r I prime, the new vector. So, obviously, we understand that epsilon vector plus r I prime should be equal to old r I. Now, we can also say that the new r I is basically the old r I plus delta r I. Then it is clear that this delta r I is nothing but negative of the epsilon. So, the change in the coordinate, because we are shifting the origin, is directly proportional to the vector by which the origin shifts, and we are talking about pure translation, we are not talking about rotation. So, we have this origin x y z and we are moving it, translating it by a vector epsilon. If we do that, then the Lagrangian, of course, in general will change, because Lagrangian is a function of r I, and the delta L, we can write it as del L del r I dot delta r I, just like we did it long back when we were looking at changes due to virtual displacement. After all, this is a standard mathematical result, somewhat follows from the chain rule. Now, delta r i's are negative of epsilon, so we substitute that, and what we get is negative epsilon dot sum of del L del r I. I mean, in this line, in the first line, there is a summation assumed, but the moment we replaced delta r I, because all changes in all position vector are identical, so we can take it out, and in that case, but the sum remains. So, this is why we are explicitly writing it down. So, it is a sum over I of del L del r I. Now, we demand that the Lagrangian should be invariant under translation. So, if we change the origin a bit, the Lagrangian should not change. Okay. So, that means if I try to describe the planetary system, its dynamics, how planets are moving around the sun, and etc., the description would be exactly same as the description given by another person who is observing the whole thing a little away, some shifted position. So, I am standing here looking at some planet, and then my friend, he is just standing couple of meters away and describing the same thing. Then dynamics wise, his description and my description should be identical. I mean, we should. So, this is the one way of keeping it identical is we demand that Lagrangian does not change. So, if we do that, then delta L is 0, but that means essentially this sum will have to be vanished, because epsilon is common for all and it is finite that we assumed. So, this sum has to vanish, but then what is this sum equal to? Individually, we know del L del r I should be ddt of del L del r I dot. I mean, this is naturally, it follows from Lagrange's equation. So, if we take the sum over i's, then this condition del L del r I sum over I equal to 0 indicates the sum of I and ddt of p I should be 0, because after all del L del r I is nothing but p I. So, that means that ddt, if we take the derivative out, then the total rate of change of the total momentum is 0. So, that means total momentum is constant. So, this is ddt is here. I forgot to write ddt. This is basically total rate of change. So, total momentum is conserved. And this conservation, I mean, it means basically if you shift the origin, after all you look at it, the velocity vectors are not supposed to change, because the new Ri and old Ri, they differ only by an amount epsilon. So, if you take the time derivative, then the epsilon does not contribute. So, kinetic energy part is not changing. Now, suppose the potential energies are also a function of, let us say, the modulus of Ri minus Rj. So, basically it is the norm of the distance of the 2 points. So, that again does not depend on from where we are describing, because this epsilon drops off. So, as such, what we see is the kinetic energy and potential energy remains unchanged if we move the origin a bit for this kind of potential. For this kind of potential, but then most of the interaction in physics that we have seen, internal interactions, are always along the radius vector. So, as such, the T and B, the kinetic energy and potential energy, if they remain unchanged under a translation in space, then we say that it is the condition of homogeneity. So, the condition of homogeneity naturally dictates that the total momentum of the system of particle should be constant, and that becomes one of our integral of motion. So, we have seen couple of integral of motion. For systems, we found that if it is a scleronomic system, then the total energy, or rather the Jacobi integral, is basically an integral of motion. And then a Jacobi integral under such condition is equal to the traditional definition of energy, that is the kinetic energy and the potential energy, not including the gyroscopic part. It is basically the old potential energy, only the coordinate dependent part. So, that is one integral of motion. Then we found that series of integral of motion, if we have series of cyclic coordinates. So, individually we can have, for individual generalized coordinate, we can have generalized momentum conserved, but we also have the total momentum, sum of all individual momentum conserved, provided there are no external forces acting on a system of particles. So, that follows from the homogeneity condition. If it holds, then total momentum is conserved. So, this is another important relation. We can also see that the conservation of total angular momentum, it follows from the isotropicity of the space, isotropic condition. So, I mean, how does it work? Well, suppose we have a vector A and we are rotating this vector about some axis n caps by an amount delta theta. Then we can analyze it this way, that we can break down the vector A into two parts. One is perpendicular to n caps, we denote it by I caps, and that amount is A perpendicular. Then we also have A parallel, and let us say A vector makes an angle with respect to n caps by an angle phi. And suppose we rotate the A vector about n caps by an angle delta theta. So, this delta theta. Then this vector would be perpendicular to both I caps and n caps. Let us call it j caps. Then we have roughly this magnitude, which is modulus of A, this norm, times sin phi, and then delta theta. So, delta A is modulus mod A, norm of A, sin phi, the component perpendicular to n caps, delta theta, and then j caps. This expression, of course, can be written in terms of n caps and cross product with I caps, because that gives us the j caps, and to that we can add 0, which is, let us say, n caps cross n caps. This is 0. So, we have sin phi n caps cross I caps here. To that we are adding cosine phi n caps cross n caps, and then a little bit of algebra that gives us the tiny change in A is nothing but the amount, the angle that we used, the delta theta, times n caps cross A. So, that describes the change in A. Now, suppose we have this origin and we are describing with respect to origin the vectors of a system of particle, the position vectors. And then we do the same trick. This time, instead of translating the coordinate system, we are rotating the coordinate system. So, you are familiar with this active rotation and passive rotation. So, you can say that what is rotation of the coordinate system. It can be thought of as if you are standing in the new coordinate system and this box, the system of particle has rotated about it, about an amount n caps. That is also an equivalent description, both the descriptions are equivalent. So, the change in a particular position vector is given by delta r I to be equal to delta theta n caps cross r I, simple. Then how does the Lagrangian change? We can use the chain rule again, and we are writing down the summation. So, del L del r I dot delta r I plus del L del r I dot delta r I dot. So, we have two different quantities, and then del L del r I is nothing but p I dot. We have seen that because after all the partial derivative with respect to generalized coordinate gives us the rate of change of the momentum from the Lagrange equation. So, we substitute that, and then del L del r I dot, this is by definition is the generalized momentum. So, we have p I dot delta r I. Now, this quantity we can write delta r I is n caps cross r I and delta r I dot is n caps cross r I dot. Well, we did not derive that, but then for any arbitrary vector, a rotation amounts to a cross product by the unit vector about which the rotation takes place and the angle by which the rotation takes place. We are assuming small angle, of course. Now, if we do that, that means that delta of r I dot can also be expressed using this, and this sum is nothing but a rate of change of r I cross p I and then n dot n caps. It is easy to see why it should be so. Just take the time derivative. So, you have r I dot cross p I and r I cross p I dot, and then use this our familiar cyclic rule that A dot B cross C is equal to A cross B dot C, or actually you can bring it the opposite way. So, A dot B cross C can also be written as that is C dot A cross B. So, we use that for both the term and we bring n to one side, and then it automatically follows that we get back this previous expression. Okay. Now, if we require that delta L is 0, so that means when you rotate the box by an amount, fixed amount, then the Lagrangian not changing. So, if you demand that, that only means that this total time derivative of this sum r I cross p I has to be 0. So, that means total angular momentum is conserved, because r I cross p I is L I, the Lth angular momentum, and its sum gives you another conserved quantity. So, now this delta L is 0, we call it isotropicity of space, that property. So, this again means that which way I am looking at, that does not change the description of a system where only interactions present which are internal, no external force. So, in that case L is invariant under rotation in space, I mean of that observer or the object itself. So, isotropicity dictates that total angular momentum is conserved. So, we got our another conserved quantity or integral of motion. In this case, this is integral of motion, not conserved quantity, because like we mentioned before, that constant of motion may have time explicitly appearing in its expression, whereas integral of motion usually do not have t. Although this definition is not very hard and fast. For example, if you look at Greenwood's book, he uses the term the constant of motion and integral of motion interchangeably. So, I mean both are identical, but then there are other books where like from which basically the Wikipedia article also constructed, the Galactic Dynamics and similar books, where constant of motion is a quantity where t can explicitly appear, whereas integral of motion is something, an expression made up of generalized velocity and generalized coordinate, which does not have explicit appearance of t time. So, in any case, so this is our another integral of motion, and we have already seen that we have this Jacobi integral that could be constant of motion for scleronomic system. We, for the sake of completeness of the discussion, because we discussed the homogeneity of the space, isotropicity of the space, so there is something called homogeneity of the time. And we know, I mean, del L del T, if L is not an explicit function of time and there are no non-potential force, then Jacobi integral is a constant of motion, an integral of motion rather. Now, for scleronomic system it happens. Now, I mean, why we call, where is the homogeneity? I mean, homogeneity in the sense that the Lagrangian, if you shift the time by an amount, then suppose you start counting time instead of now a little later. So, you shift t by t plus t0, I mean but t0 is a small quantity. So, small or large, either way, shifting the origin of time by a fixed amount, it does not change the derivative with respect to time. So, which means the kinetic energy will remain unchanged, and so will be the potential energy, because for scleronomic system, the time does not explicitly appear in the Lagrangian. So, that means Lagrangian and Jacobi integral, they are invariant under translation in time, and that automatically leads to the conservation of energy. So, we have conservation of total momentum, total linear momentum, and conservation of total angular momentum, and conservation of energy. The three things follow from a certain property of the Lagrangian. I mean, so that essentially concludes our discussion on the conserved quantities or integral of motion.